Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here. Hi there, it's Angela, and thanks for listening in to episode 18 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. Now, today we're going to be having a conversation with Nikki White, who happens to be a great colleague and friend of mine when we started our own businesses way back in 2003 and 2005. We met through our local primary school where our boys were playing soccer together, and we went through those first months, weeks and months, and even years of getting our businesses off the ground. We often laugh looking back because we ran around with that real feeling of imposter syndrome. Will anyone find out that we don't really know what we're doing yet? But nevertheless, we plunged on ahead and really supported each other as we got things off the ground. Now, Nikki's always had this exceptional knack for organization and productivity and getting things done and all things tech. I often then, and still do, go to Nikki and ask her how to sort things out online because she just seems to really know the tools and learns them so quickly. But she's also got a real philosophical twist to this more traditional techie approach with her whole philosophy on business. So in her first chapters of her working life, Nikki worked as a receptionist and she was a PA, and she was really honing her administration skills back then. But then once marriage and kids became a part of her story, she, like so many of us, realised that although the corporate pathway was no longer for her, she really wanted and needed to be more than just a mum. That's how she felt, and I felt the same way. Now that's when Nikki launched Scribes, which was her VA, her virtual assistance business, from the spare room at her home back in 2005, and that's when her entrepreneurial adventure began. Now VAs are really, really well known now, but they weren't back then. So it really was a brave move and an innovative move on Nikki's behalf. But when you fast forward to today, she's really diversified her business. She's divorced, she's repartnered, she became a Theta Healer, and she also founded Wellness Hubs Australia, and that's a national networking, training and support network for wellness practitioners right across the country. And she also uses her deep and rich understanding of technology, which really blows me away, the stuff she knows, to provide online business management services for several blossoming entrepreneurs. Now she's got, as I said, that really unique blend of talents and philosophies where she combines this modern day tech that really takes you out of overwhelm with a holistic approach. She asks her clients to really tap into the energy of their business and to pause and get really intentional. And that's when the flow and the ease can come. So in this episode, we're exploring some of the easiest ways you can make small but powerful changes in your own business practices so that you can welcome clarity and space and organization into your working day. And Nikki's given us a great resource. It's a list and hot links for 23 of the handiest tools that you can use for your own online business. Everything from online accounting and meeting software to project management and do-it-yourself graphic creation. It's a great list and it will cut down your time in searching for the right tools to explore online. Now, to download that list, you simply go to angelarasmus.com/18, that's 18, and the word download. And then there's all those great links that Nikki has put together for us. But let's dive in, shall we? There is so much goodness in this interview, as well as always that dose of inspiration to help you move forward into your own next chapter. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to another episode in the Your Next Chapter podcast. And this week we're getting to chat with a woman who is one of my belief buddies in the world, but also happens to be an amazing online expert. Her name is Nikki White, and she is an online business manager who really helps successful entrepreneurial women get things done by taking care of their online businesses in partnership with them. But she is also the creator of Wellness Hubs Australia, where she helps wellness practitioners do a better job of their business, basically, and helping them expand and create that. Nikki, I am so grateful for you to find time in your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you, and I'm really excited to be here.
This is one of these conversations I've really been looking forward to, because your story has got so much depth to it. I mean, we've been friends and colleagues for a long time, and we've talked so often about all the different opportunities and ideas, and the ups and the downs of business. So we've really seen each other grow and develop. And I want you to start today in this interview with really sharing a little bit about what your previous chapters have looked like, because the things you're doing today are not what you were doing in the past.
Exactly. And I think we had that conversation the other day where I listed off about the 10 different things that I've done on my journey, going, oh my God. But yeah, okay, so let me start at the beginning. So my very first chapter was admin based, and that was when I used to, basically all my life I've done admin. So I started off as receptionist, and I got into PA work, obviously in corporates when I was in my 20s, did all that kind of stuff, left, had my kids, and became a mum. I think after that, when I decided that it was time for me to do something, I didn't really love being a stay-at-home mum, so I needed something to get me going again. So I looked around the world to see what I could do with my admin skills, and I found this world of virtual assistants. So my very first business was started in 2005. It was called Scribes, and I did typing of reports for doctors and actually a private investigator. So that was my very first chapter of small business.
I remember that one, the private investigating work. That sounded really interesting. Here I am doing work for a PI.
I know, and I used to watch all the surveillance videos, and it's very funny. So I had two very small children at that time. I interestingly broke up from my husband in December 2005 after I had started my business in July 2005. So to say I threw myself in the deep end of small business, I think you can say that that's what I did. I had to make that business work, and it did, which was very good.
And that mark that you made before, the remark you were saying, you had a look around to see what I could do with my admin skills. That's exactly what so many of us do, as I've found when we're creating next chapters. We look at the skills that we had in corporate world, like with me, I was in marketing. So, big leap here, I'll become a marketing consultant. And in your case, I was in admin and the secretarial side, so it makes sense to move into the VA business. But then things start to change after a while, and we get interested in other areas. Life moves on, we develop, and new opportunities open up to us. What happened with you there?
So I guess like every other small business that starts out, when they start, I was everything to everybody. And I felt that was the way to go, as most of us do, because we're desperate for clients, so we take anything that comes along. Then I started to get a few clients that I really liked working with. So I started to niche my VA business into the keynote speaker world, and I actually turned into more of a virtual personal assistant rather than a virtual assistant. And I guess the difference is now, you have the Filipino VAs that are very task-based. Back then that didn't even exist. So even for me to go from like a standard VA doing transcription and reports into a virtual personal assistant was a big step. But I managed to learn about running people's businesses remotely, and I brought all in my PA skills and basically just became a PA that didn't sit in their office. I just sat at home, but they were in their office. So it worked really, really well, and the niching was unbelievable. I can't recommend niching enough to people in business because it just took off after that.
That's such a good point, and it's one that I completely agree with. I know with my own business, it's like you. I started back in, actually, I think it was 2003 when I first started Ideas into Action, and that was quite some time ago. But with this business now, when I decided to get really clear on who I take care of, who I see as a most aligned client for me, which is women in their 40s and beyond, creating next chapter businesses, it took off. Rather than I'm just a business mentor in general. When I was very broad, the business was going okay, but it was when I niched that it suddenly went boom and started blossoming. So that's a really important message for everyone to hear, because we do get scared sometimes that we'll miss out if we niche down. If we try and appeal to a smaller market, we'll somehow miss out. But it's just not true, is it?
No, and I think, it's really important for people to understand it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So, as soon as I said this is all I do and I only work with keynote speakers, every keynote speaker wanted to become on my books because I was the expert at running these businesses, and I had the contacts at the speakers bureaus, and I was getting speaking gigs for people. So they all wanted a part of that. So it was really good fun. It was a good time, actually.
And you get the other point that you made about recognizing the people that you were enjoying working with. That's really important as well. When we're enjoying the people that we're working with, that's when we tend to do our best work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, a definite transition. But what we're seeing along the way, and what I've certainly seen of you, and it's always amazed me, is that how you wrap your head so quickly around all the different online systems and resources and, things to help us run our businesses more efficiently and effectively, because goddamn, there is so many options out there. Even if I'm thinking about what should I use for email marketing, there's 25 different options. It's really not surprising that I know some of the observations you have made is that people lose their work-life balance. We start these businesses for a bit of freedom and balance, but then sometimes we feel like we're working 24/7 and really feeling an overwhelm. So you take people out of that, yeah?
Yes, I do. And can I just read you a little extract that I use? I do speaking a lot as well, and I talk about saving time and efficiencies. And back in March 2015, there was a journalist at the Good Weekend magazine in the Sydney Morning Herald who wrote this amazing article. And can I just read a little excerpt of it that I use in my presentations?
Yes, please.
So he says, I know I have crossed the boundaries of normal work life when I start daydreaming about being hospitalised. Maybe, I deliriously think to myself, I'll be run over by a car soon. In my daydreams, I'm severely injured, but in a fashion that causes little pain and no permanent damage to vital organs. And I'm also recovering in a luxury suite and have Foxtel. And I think that's so perfect because I think, yes, in small business, we start our businesses to go, I'm doing this for work-life balance. A lot of people do it because they've got kids at home. And then all of a sudden you go from working a job that you could leave behind to having this business that's constantly in your mind 24/7. And we're working at a lot more hours than what we should be.
Yeah, that's true. It's that creeping effect. And I think it's difficult sometimes to ascertain the difference between you working and doing extra hours, so to speak, because you're immersed in what you love, and working and doing extra hours because you can't see a way of actually cutting the work down or extricating yourself or finding ways to make it simpler. Because I know that I work sometimes in the evenings and sometimes in the weekend, but that's usually on projects that I'm really loving. But I also know that I'm not working as smart as I could. So what do we do? Help.
Okay. So I think we talked about overwhelm a little bit just then. I think they're two different things. I think there's overwhelm and then there's work-life balance. So which one do you want to focus on first, the overwhelm or the work-life balance?
Let's start with the overwhelm because I know that's a word that a lot of people use, especially when it comes to trying to choose what sort of resources and tools to use.
Sure. So the first advice I give to everybody who's in overwhelm is dump everything out of your head. And I know that sounds really, really simple, but the thing that causes us stress is, and our feelings of overwhelm and that anxiety is that we're walking around with all our thoughts, all our to-dos, all our ideas in our head. And just by getting those out of your head and onto a document or a piece of paper or however you want to record it is an amazingly liberating feeling. And I have a beautiful example of that when I did work with these speakers, and I probably had about 6 or 7 clients at the time, I was in that zone. I just had so much in my head that I felt like I couldn't actually function because I was just so concerned that I was going to lose something. So I actually got butcher's paper and I wrote the client's name at the top of each piece of butcher's paper, and underneath them I just wrote what I need to do for that client and stuck them all up around my wall. And then somebody walked into my office one day and went, oh my God, you've got so much to do. And I said, I know, but I feel amazing because it was all on the wall and I didn't have to stress about it anymore.
It was out of your head. That is so true. I know it's a tiny example by comparison, but I keep a thing that I call the net. So the net is simply a list that sits beside me at all times, and when I'm working on a project, if one of those stray thoughts goes bang into my head, that interrupts me. I've got to get it down on that paper because then I know I can relax again. Otherwise, that keeps buzzing around in my head. So I catch everything in the net. So it's like a little version of what you're talking about, much better out than in.
Absolutely. There's David Allen, who is a guru at efficiencies and time management. He says, your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. And I think that's a really lovely quote to remember. It's just, have an idea, record it. Have an ideas book, and keep it separate so that you can record all your ideas and then revisit them at a later point and think, well, is this a good idea? Or actually, that was a really crap idea. What was I thinking? That kind of thing.
That's a great quote. Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. So we're not designed as filing cabinets. No. We're designed as light bulbs, as idea generators.
Yeah. Then the other thing that creates a lot of overwhelm in small business owners is their inbox.
You've seen mine, haven't you?
Oh, not for a while. So it'll be interesting to see yours. But yeah, so people who have, the 2,000 unread emails in their inbox, that is a massive subconscious overwhelm stress that shouldn't be there. And just by putting in a few strategies to manage your inbox better, you can actually just reduce that overwhelm, because regardless of what people believe in, subconscious beliefs are there, and seeing that those unread emails is always going to cause you some kind of overwhelm and stress.
So do we just delete them once we've read them, or I'm looking at mine now going,
Okay, so how I suggest people manage their inboxes, and I'll just try and do this quite quickly because it can get a bit in depth, but basically use the folder system. So how I work it is I create hundreds of folders, or 800 folders, or I break my whole business up into folders on the left-hand side of whatever your email client is, and I start to use those. So for instance, let's say I'm working on client A, and there's 4 emails in my inbox about client A, but I'm not really ready to work with client A's stuff yet. I leave them all unread and I drag them into client A's folder. And then when I'm sitting down to work with client A, I will go into that folder and I know that those 4 emails in there that are unread still need to be actioned. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I can see that as you're saying it, that because then they're there, so when you're in the mindset or you've got the time available for them, but they're not all sitting in that inbox taunting you.
Yes. So you actually kind of project manage your emails for when you're actually going to work on that project. And also some other strategies are just have your email reading at a set time. So again, David Allen has a process called getting things done. So anything that you can action under 2 minutes, you just do it in that email checking time. Anything longer than that becomes part of a project that you move into a to be done later folder on the side.
And I've heard a philosophy that talks about don't start your day by reading your emails, because then you're pulled into somebody else's agenda really quickly. Is that a philosophy that you share?
Absolutely. So yes, if you are, and that's when we get to productivity and things like that, is if you're running your day by your inbox, you're actually running your days and your to-dos by other people's agendas and what their needs are. Whereas what you want to be doing is planning out your day of the things that you need to get done and then slotting those requests in around that. So you being in control of your day, not your inbox being in control of your day.
Well, that feels quite freeing and liberating, as you said, just the thought of it.
Yeah. And, inboxes are such a high cause of stress and overwhelm in small business that I've even seen an inbox meditation somewhere. And I was fearing that I didn't keep it at the time because I've never been able to find it again since, but I mention it all the time. So it's massive. There's, if you're struggling with inbox stress, you are not the only one out there, trust me. But if you can get in control of it, it will absolutely help with the overwhelm that you're feeling.
Fantastic. So there's a couple of just real key starting points there, using the folder system, so you're project managing your inbox and deciding to read your emails at a given time rather than just whenever they pop up.
Exactly.
So 2 great starting points. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. And can I also just say, for the people that do have thousands of emails sitting in their inbox currently, what you can do is you just create a folder that says old emails and just drag them all in there. So you just get rid of them straight away and then start to use the new process with the stuff that comes in. And then when you have time, you can go back to the old stuff and start sorting it out.
Yeah, because that's a great suggestion, because there's that fear of, what if I delete it? What if I need it again?
Yeah.
So just stick them over there for now, give you that sense of at least even temporary relief so that you can bring that system into play.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, okay. I can see what I'll be doing this weekend. So that's a couple of things for dealing with overwhelm in particular, that getting it out of your head and handling your inbox. So, okay, we've bitten off those 2 pieces. Where do I go next?
Okay, so where you go next is creating time zones is another great way to run your business. So again, rather than running your email, your to-dos and things like that via your inbox, I suggest that you do that with your calendar as well. So how I get people to do this is I get them to create what we call a default diary. So literally kind of going, in a perfect world, how much time do I have to work on my business and in my business? So how that works is basically you take a new calendar if you're online and just call it a default version, or you can do this via a paper diary to just kind of get your head around it. First thing I do is I put in all my personal stuff. So I put in all my kid appointments, anything like picking them up from school, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be working in those time zones. And then I put in client time. So it goes personal, client, and then all your admin and your marketing and your other things around that. It's good to create a default month, because there are things that you would only do once a month. And it's also good to put in things like, reviewing your profit and loss and doing your accounts or doing your invoicing and all your financial stuff as well. So at a glance, you can see that technically, in a perfect world, in a month, you can get everything done. Or if you can't, and you go, well, that's actually why I'm in complete overwhelm and working 24/7, I just don't have enough hours in the day, then we go to the next step of the process, which is to go, well, what are you good at? What do you love doing? And how can you outsource the rest? And I know that you're going to have Christy Smith talking about outsourcing next time. So it's really good that if in the week that between the 2 podcasts, people can start thinking about that kind of thing, they'll be ready for that information when it comes through.
Yeah, and they can see whether or not there is some choices there for outsourcing. This time zone system is something that I'm definitely a fan of. I definitely use calendar blocking, as I call it. Otherwise, everything sort of just blends together. And it's interesting how the personal, the client, then the marketing and admin, I start with the personal, the marketing, and then the client and admin. So, that's the marketing background of me coming back through. But it works. It works really effectively. And that exercise can also show you. I've seen people get tripped up on their financial goals, for example. Like, I want to generate, $60,000 this year in my business. And when they actually start rocking back and looking at the time they have available, it's not actually possible on the current setup they have. People can berate themselves and get really upset. Why can't I make this work? But the goal is unrealistic when you look at the time that's actually available. So you either have to find a way to take more time for your business, or you need to readjust your goals. So it actually has a lot of really positive awakening outcomes when you do this time zone exercise.
Absolutely. And it's not a test either. Like, it's not how much can I cram in. It's actually just being really honest with yourself. I mean, obviously I work with a lot of wellness practitioners. So, somebody like a massage therapist, you can't have back-to-back clients, because you have to change the towels and you have to, reset the room. So you've absolutely got at least 15 minutes interchange between one client and another. So it's totally ridiculous for you to say, yep, I'm going to see 8 clients a day, because you don't actually have the time to do that. So the more honest and open you can be with yourself about how much time you have, and especially for the mums, I see so many mums that go, well, I've got too much kid time. then if you've got kid time, work around that kid time. You know, the whole reason you built your business was to be there for your kids. So don't try and cram everything in.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that, I think another piece that's really important to put in there is the buffer zones. Like, that's what you're saying, changing the towels, you know, whatever else you need to do around your appointments. But it's just giving you the space.
And lunch.
It's just so important, because I know that if I jump from client to client, then that client is not going to have, like, I'm not going to be fully present and intentional, because I've had no time to absorb, write the notes, put them aside from the last client, then actually get into the zone of wrapping my head in heart around the next client's business and situation. So building in that buffer, because I know in the past I've definitely underestimated how much time it takes me to get things done. I'm always hugely optimistic of what can be on my to-do list, and these sort of exercises have helped me get a bit more realistic about that.
And that's why it's good to have a separate calendar as your default calendar, because as you start to actually work it, you can keep adjusting it based on, so, you know, like if you've got, well, I'm going to write a press release and you've assigned yourself half an hour, but it actually takes an hour and a half, you'll know for next time that to write a press release that month, you're going to have to allow yourself an hour and a half. So you can start to mold your default diary to work with the realistic, if that's not really a word, but anyway, of what happens in your life.
Okay, now how about, Nikki, this is a thought that pops up, and it's probably not the only one who thinks that. It's like, oh my God, that is so disciplined. I don't know if I'm wired that way.
Yeah. I do get that a lot. And you know, yes, there are a lot of people that aren't wired that way, but when you try it, it really, really works. So I just encourage people to be open to it, but it is called a default diary for that reason. It's also being kind on yourself. Like, if it doesn't work, or you have a blowout one day or whatever, don't beat yourself up about it. Or, you know, if you've got a sick kid, then sure, everything's going to go out the window. That's life. That's what happens. So just being not so hard on yourself that if this is it, it has to sit in stone. I'm actually creating myself a guideline to follow, and I'm going to do the best I can. But if something blows out, then you know what? I'll pick it up the next day.
Yeah, that's the absolute point to it. This is, I talk about this as a framework. It's not a straitjacket.
Yeah.
And that those words, be kind to yourself, you know, self-compassion in business, I think is sorely underrated.
Exactly. And then can I also just say that when we're time zoning and things like that, one of the other biggest tips that I give people is to turn off all notifications. So, you know, just like when you send out your podcast instructions to the interviewees, you say, you know, turn off all your notifications, your Skype, your email, because I don't want that banging through my podcast. The reason that you do that is because you want me as your interviewee to be 100% focused on this interview. So why don't we give that opportunity to ourselves when we're in a work zone? So let's say we had that hour and a half to write a press release. You know, quit out of your mail and turn your Skype off so that you actually give yourself the best chance possible to get that task done, rather than totally being distracted by all the pings and pop-ups and noises on your computer that take your focus somewhere else, and then you find yourself 3 hours later on Facebook and your press release didn't even get written.
That's a great point, and it's something that I am trying to discipline myself to do more often, so there's not that bright, shiny, oh, what was that? Oh, I'll just have a look at that.
Yeah.
Because I have heard, I can't remember where I read it, but it was when you interrupt a flow of thought and do something else to get back into the flow, no matter what it is that you're doing, whether you're writing web copy, you know, you're composing an email, you're doing a podcast interview, whatever the case may be, to get back into flow can take you a good 10 to 15 minutes again to hit that same spot. Yeah. So if you keep getting interrupted, it's not surprising, or if you allow yourself to be interrupted, it's not surprising that you don't feel that you're getting done what you possibly could.
Absolutely. And on that note, you know, Facebook is the biggest hindrance in that. And the reason is because we're all using Facebook as a business tool. But so, and you know what, even this happens for me. Like I'll think, okay, I'm going to go and schedule some posts. And when you open Facebook, you know, your news feed comes up. So then you go, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And you start scrolling. And then 15 minutes later you go, why was I even in here? And you close the thing down. And then you go back to your to-do list and go, oh, I was meant to be putting posts up.
Yeah, that's a real challenge, isn't it? Because it's got that. I mean, Facebook was originally created as a social form of communication. So yes, and they're very good with their algorithms. They pop things up there that they know are going to entice us, and off we go, disappearing down the rabbit hole of Facebook and never to be seen again.
So what I try and do now is I'll go, and only for Facebook will I set my timer on my phone, so that I'll go, okay, well, I'm going to do 3-4 scheduled posts. I'll give myself 15 minutes and I'll set the timer on my phone. So I kind of challenge myself that I'll jump into Facebook, do what I need to do and get out. And then, I use my night times when I'm sloughing in front of the TV with the kids to then start scrolling through the feed and see what happened during the day.
So there we go. We've just set the Facebook challenge to give yourself time, actual time. Let that alarm go off and get you back to the real world. Yeah. I like it. Brilliant. Well, there's some really great insights and tips and directives there for how we can get ourselves out of that overwhelm piece. So let's flip across to the other side of the equation, which was the work-life balance.
Okay. Well, it kind of all falls in together. I think we kind of melded it all together in that discussion. We started off in overwhelm and went back into work-life balance with the time zones and the default diaries. I think outsourcing definitely will help you with your work-life balance. I think
our conversation blended all over the place, which is exactly the way we talk in real life, so it makes perfect sense. Well, let's have a look at one of the things that you're providing us with as the resource for this episode, which will be fantastic, is that list of real resources, the effective online tools and resources that you, being an online business manager and someone that is very, very techie and time-wise focused, will be providing us with. And everyone to download this brilliant list that will help you make choices, because there are so many options out there. You just go to angelarasmus.com/16, that's 16, and the word download for that wonderful list from Nikki. But Nick, could we have a look at a few of those? Like if we're thinking about how we could perhaps get a little bit more efficient online, what's say 2 or 3 of the top tools that you'd recommend solopreneurs have a look at?
Look, Angela, it really depends on where people are at business. Mm-hmm. So, if you were just starting out, I'd definitely get onto MailChimp as a newsletter platform. If you've got a team, I'd really be looking at some project management software like Basecamp or Asana. With a lot of my clients, we're using a chat tool called Slack Chat, so you can kind of chat offline and you're not clogging up the emails. So it really depends. What I'll try and do is when I do the list for the listeners, I'll kind of push it into maybe, starting out medium or a bit more advanced in business, which might help people a bit more.
Yeah, some different categories. That would be great. Yeah. So I know one of the places where I suck time up is comparing. Okay, should I use Basecamp or should I use Asana or should I use XYZ? And spending ridiculous amounts of time, and I'll put my hand up here, of doing these comparisons. And even today, like I'm using ActiveCampaign. That's my email client these days. I used to use MailChimp. Then I see popping up people talking about ConvertKit, and I go, ooh, maybe I should go and see if that's better than what I'm using now. You got any cures for that sort of thing? I know this is a completely off-the-cuff question, but is there we should give ourselves like a basic list of what our needs are and then be searching? Or because that just trips me up so often.
Yeah, so it's all just, I think especially when you've got something in place, just stick with it at the moment. Unless it's not serving your purposes, don't even go looking. Like, there's so many options out there. It's like hair colour. You don't look at somebody with red hair and go, oh, I might just go over there because I'm a bit sick of my blonde. Do you know what I mean? It's just another option. They all do the same thing. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's whatever interface you really like. So, for instance, I use Buffer as my scheduling software, and most people use Hootsuite. Why do I use Buffer? Because I just like the look of it better than Hootsuite, and I just find the Hootsuite interface is too busy for me. There's no difference. It's just that's what appeals to me. So I think, yes, have a list of what it is that you need to do, because that tool obviously needs to service your need, but don't get hung up on, well, everybody else is using this, I have to use that. Use what works for you. I a video blog about it the other day, just about not following the crowd because you have to. Just do what works for you in your business.
Yeah, that's such a good point. If I think about active campaigns working, just pull your head in, put your attention and your energy in other areas, because it really doesn't need to be looked at again.
Yeah, and same with membership sites. There's so many of them. They all do a slightly different thing. It's whatever interface that you've set up, or, so many people ask me, well, what is the best? There is no best. Do you know what I mean? It's like driving a car. They all do the same thing. You just might prefer the one with the sunroof and somebody else might prefer the one with the big tyres. That's all it is.
Yeah, so it's very much a personal preference. Well, it'd be great to have a look at that list as well, so that may help for some people who haven't made decisions on the different tools that they want to use. That may cut down that research time that I know I've spent a lot at.
Yeah, exactly. And there might just be some tools there that they go, oh, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this whole concept of getting out of overwhelm, of having a balance, of finding the tools that support the way that you want to work and the things that you want to achieve in your business, all of those things are so important for us to have almost free up some of that headspace so that we can focus on the actual building of our businesses, the connecting with our clients, the creating the services and delivering the services that we want. But I know that I can have all the tools, all the strategies, all those sort of things in place, but there's one thing, and this is common to all the conversations I've been having, that can trip us up. And I'm really interested with everyone that I speak to find out how this happened for you. Self-doubt is the thing that I'm talking about here, and that may be, the doubt about your ability to make a good choice of which one of those systems to use, or your ability to handle the technology, or your ability to actually go into a new area of business or grow it. So you've made, if we look back from Scribes in 2005 through to the heart of when you were looking after your speakers, through to wellness hubs and being an online business manager, there's been that progression that you've made through your chapters. But along the way, did you get tripped up by that self-doubt?
I was totally confident the whole way.
That's it. Interview ends now.
Oh, God. I mean, I think just last weekend I was going to chuck it all in, and I said to my partner, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm just going to do it. Just chuck it all in. It's too hard. I think, we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, to live up to that epitome of a successful entrepreneur. There isn't one. All the bells and whistles and the big mirrors that people are pushing out through Facebook and through their email campaigns, that's what they want you to see. They're probably just as, scared or unfocused or nervous as you are, but they're not going to show that to you because that's not what you want to project to your clients or to the outside world. So, I think we take for granted so much what we do. I think there's a few things. I think we don't celebrate our little wins. We don't celebrate our successes. I mean, I went to Queensland the other week to launch our first Queensland hub. To the outside, that was really exciting and it was a big deal, and it was. But I sat on the plane and I had to really think to myself, and I said this to myself, you have just launched another interstate branch of your national business, because it hadn't really sunk into me that was the scale of what I was dealing with, because we're so caught in the nitty-gritty of our day-to-day getting it done, and, we don't allow ourselves to look from the outside in, I think. So the self-doubt creeps in because we're comparing our insides to everybody else's outsides.
I think you're absolutely right. And so that concept there of what I've heard called, and I certainly use, is reverse gapping. I think we so quickly, we do something and then we're on to, okay, what's the next thing on the list? And we don't pause to savour what it is that we've actually achieved. And if we did, we could more readily build up that reservoir of self-belief inside, because we've got so much evidence of the things that we can achieve when we put our minds to it.
And one really nice way to do that is to always go back to your newsletter list. So if you go back and have a look at the first newsletter you sent, how many people was it sent to? So in my case, I've got a database of over 1,500 people at the moment. My first newsletter probably went out to 50-something people. And it's just looking at those measurements and thinking, look how far I've come. Or, taking screenshots of your first ever website and keeping it on file so that as you build bigger and better businesses and different websites, you look back and giggle at how pathetic some of the things that you created at the beginning were.
Yeah, there's definite progress when you look back with the benefit of hindsight.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, you know what, we're never going to get rid of self-doubt. You know, it doesn't even matter how many times people come here and say, yes, I've had it. You know, we're always going to have it. I think sometimes it's just allowing yourself to have it. You know, like I just allowed myself all weekend to be in this big funk about, you know, I'm just going to chuck it all in. But then by Monday morning, I got myself back together again and loving it. So I think just allowing it and trying not to fight it as well. And my bin truck's about to come down the road.
Great timing on it. Well, we're coming to the end of this part of the conversation, but I just wanted to reflect back and add to what you've said there, because I think it's so true. Allowing ourselves to recognise that everybody goes through self-doubt. I mean, people could look at where you're sitting today with your business, and I hope they do when they're checking in the links and seeing, you know, what an incredibly professional and helpful, very, very helpful business that you've created for wellness practitioners. But if we take you way back to when I was there, when you were establishing Scribes in the spare bedroom, you know, we both struggled with, can we really do this? You know, is anyone going to find out that we don't really know what we're doing? Remember that imposter syndrome we had back in 2005? And we've really made a lot of progress. And I encourage everyone who's listening to give themselves that same dose of self-compassion. And as Nikki's saying, look back on the little steps, on the progress that you have made, because it's a cliche, but from little things, big things grow.
Absolutely.
Well, that was such a delicious blend here. We've roamed all over from, you know, that first starting out to lots and lots of different business tools and practices and things that we can do to get ourselves out of overwhelm, to, you know, delving into what's happening between our two ears in terms of the self-belief and building and changing businesses. It's been a real trip, Miss Nikki. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And can I just do one more thing? Can I just
give
one more tip? It just occurred to me that I hadn't talked about it. I think, and I know your audience is, I don't know, I'm going to use the word spiritual, but you don't have to be spiritual. You just have to tap into your intuition. And I know that that's very much your audience, so I can kind of talk about this.
Totally.
But in productivity and overwhelm and things like that, I always recommend to my clients, use your intuition, trust your gut, and really go with what feels right. So if you've got a to-do list that is 10 pages long, don't just start at the top and work the way down. Really meditate on it, tune in and ask the universe, what's the most important thing that I can do today for my business? And really by giving your business an energy and tapping into that energy every day in the morning. So just, you know, in your journaling time or whatever it is. So it's before I even turn on my emails. It's before I even fire up the computer. I'll just sit at my desk and just spend 2 minutes going, what's the most important thing today? And never have I got something that's put me into overwhelm or too much for that day. And I know that if I can get those 2 or 3 or 4 things done that day, I'll feel like I'm in control and successful.
That's great advice, that whole plan or pause. Don't plunge straight in. Just gather yourself for a moment. I mean, the word of the year, I mean, that's a concept that I use. The one that I'm having this year is intentional. And that's related to what it is that you're saying there. It's just pause, tap into your intuition, get intentional about what you're doing. Give yourself those messages that you're not rushed and overwhelmed. You know, just change the record, change the script. I love that. I really think intuition is underrated, and I certainly am recognizing that I'm listening to it more. I don't know if it's getting older and wiser. I'm not sure what it is, or hanging around you, I reckon. But it's definitely opening me up to other possibilities and a more graceful way of doing business.
And it just takes that stress out, you know. It's my word for the year is allowing. So just allowing what happens to happen, and, you know, what will be, will be.
Yeah, I'm with you there, absolutely. Well, Nikki, where can we come find you online? Because I know that a lot of people listening are going to want to track you down in the nicest possible way.
All right, so if you are a wellness business owner and you are looking for support and business help, then you go to you go to wellnesshubsaustralia.com.au. So, and it's hubs with an S. If you are looking for online business management, we will put the link in the show notes because it is a little bit long, but it is theheartof.com.au /online business manager.
Great. I'll make sure that those links are in there. And even though we both said that Facebook can suck us in, can we find you online in that respect?
Yes, absolutely. So you can, for you to friend me. So I'm just Nikki White. I have a blue, you'll have the same picture that you'll see on the show notes that you'll be able to see on Facebook. And the Wellness Hubs Australia is just that name in full after the facebook.com.
Brilliant. I will make sure that those are up there so everybody can find you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your journey, and all of those experiences and insights that we're going to choose to incorporate into our own businesses so that we can let go of the overwhelm and also bring in a bit more of that intuition to listen to what the energy of our business is telling us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me. And I hope that bin truck didn't wreck me.
It just gave a little edge of flavour to the interview. It was fine.
The joys of working from home.
Exactly. Thank you. And so everyone that's listening, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Nikki is, I said at the beginning, is one of my own dear friends and belief buddies, but also I have a huge respect for the information and the knowledge and the expertise that she shares. So definitely take a moment to download the resource associated with this episode. You'll find it really useful. So that was angelarasmus.com/1616 and the word download. So thanks as always for spending your time here with me today on the Next Chapter podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying the episodes, I'd love it if you could take a moment to leave a review on iTunes for me. What that does is that it makes the podcast easier for people to find so that more women who are heading into their own next chapters in business and life can connect into the wisdom and the experience that we're sharing here. So thanks again for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you again next week on the next episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelarasmus.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.